The Force is old and full of shadows.
The respirator breathes. In out the sound that defined an empire, that scattered rebel pilots across star systems, that made senators go pale at their podiums, that entered the nightmares of an entire generation, reduced now to this. A machine keeping a broken man alive inside a black shell on a burning station. Luke's voice cuts through the smoke. "Father, I've got to save you," Luke said. Vader hears it the way a drowning man hears sound from above the waterline. Distorted, too far. Already belonging to a different world. "You already have, Luke," he replied. The words cost him. Each one a stone dragged up from somewhere deep, dragged past damaged lungs and a vocoder, already glitching on its last power cell. He means it, every syllable. He means it more than anything he has said in 20 years of darkness and commands and screaming silence inside the mask. Luke takes the helmet off. The air hits his ruined face and Vader feels it, really feels it, for the first time since Mustafar. Not processed, not filtered, not delivered through a life support membrane. Real air. Recycled station air carrying smoke and ozone, and the smell of burning durasteel, but real. He breathes it with the quarter lung capacity the suit leaves him, and it tastes like absolution. He looks at his son's face. He tries to memorize it. The station groans around them. Deep structural sounds, the kind a building makes when it has already decided to fall and is simply working out the sequence. "For the first time in a long time," Vader says, and the vocoder stutters. And he pushes through it. "You were right about me." Luke is crying. Vader watches him, and the thing in his chest that has not functioned correctly in decades, not the mechanical heart pump, not the regulated circulation system, but the other thing, the thing no Sith alchemy ever touched. That thing opens. He closes his eyes. The respirator breathes. In, out, in, then nothing. Not darkness. Darkness has texture, has weight, is a thing you can press against. This is the absence of the category entirely. No dark, no light, no body, no sound, no Vader, no Anakin, no wound in the chest where a son pulled his father back from the edge of everything. Only awareness. Awareness without a vessel, which should be terrifying and is instead the most complete silence he has ever known. Something stirs in it. Many voices, or one voice with many layers, the way a chord is many notes, and also a single sound. Ancient, unhurried, carrying the weight of geological time rather than the urgency of living things. "You are not finished." He doesn't speak. He has no mouth to speak with. But the intention forms, the instinct to push back, to say "I am done, I died, I earned this." And the voices feel it, the way water feels a stone dropped into it. The prophecy was fulfilled in letter, not in truth. He knows this. Some part of him that has been thinking since before his heart stopped has already assembled the pieces. Palpatine died on the Death Star. Palpatine's contingencies did not. The Sith eternal. The cloning vats. The thing festering in the unknown regions on a world with no name in the star charts. The unfinished hunger of a man who refused the natural order so completely that death itself had not been able to hold him. Balance was performed. Balance was not achieved. The voices do not explain further than this. They do not need to. He was a commander for 2 decades. He understands the briefing. The boy still burns. His ember is there, in the shadow of the life he was never allowed to choose. A pause. If silence can hold breath, this one does. You are the only instrument already tempered for this. He pushes back again. Not from cowardice, from arithmetic. The boy on Tatooine, the 9-year-old with grease-stained hands and a grin that could light a hangar bay, is not him. 45 years of Anakin Skywalker's life have built a chasm between that child and the man who just died on a space station. Going back is not going home. Going back is something else. Something that carries more danger than a lightsaber ever could. You will not go back as a ghost. You will not go back as a memory. You will go back as a man. Because the task requires hands. He feels the edge of something vast preparing to move. You finished the man. You did not finish the mission. The sand hits him first. Heat, pressure, the scrape of grit against skin. Skin, not durasteel, not polymer, not the hermetic seal of a suit that kept him alive and imprisoned simultaneously, and his hands slam into the ground before his mind has caught up with the fact that he has hands. He gasps. Real air. Too much of it. Lungs that work without mechanical assistance pulling in a full breath. A full breath. For the first time since he was 19 years old, and the sheer volume of it is almost violent. He coughs. Braces on both palms against the sand. Coughs again. Twin suns. Overhead, the quality of the light is unmistakable. The particular orange-white doubling that his child memory filed away and his adult life never retrieved, because there had been no room for it. Tatooine. He knows before he looks. The smell of the air. The specific texture of the dune sea's heat. The way sound dies in open desert, swallowed by sand and distance until the world becomes very quiet and very large at once. He sits back on his heels. He lifts his right hand in front of his face. 5 fingers. Flesh. Unscarred across the knuckles. He turns the hand over, then back. The palm is... He doesn't have a word for what the palm is. The palm is his. It belonged to him once, and then it was taken, and now the cosmic force has apparently decided the ledger needed correcting. And here it is. Here it is. He touches his own face. The jaw, the cheekbone, the bridge of the nose. He finds the place where Mustafar burned through, and there is nothing there. No scar tissue. No nerve-dead patches. His face is 30 years old and whole and his, and he presses both palms flat against it and stays there for a long moment, breathing. Then he makes a sound. Not a word. Not a command. A sound that has no tactical value and no dignity whatsoever, and he is alone in the dune sea with no one to hear it, so it doesn't matter. And it comes up out of him like something that has been stored under pressure for decades. Grief and relief and disbelief occupying the same instant, the same exhale, impossible to separate. He laughs. The laugh becomes something else. He lets it. The desert holds it all without judgment. That is what deserts do. He sits in the sand of his home planet with tears cutting clean lines down an unscarred face and his whole chest shaking with the effort of processing the impossible, and for a few minutes he simply allows it. No Sith discipline. No dark side composure. No Anakin Skywalker keeping the terror locked behind the jaw because showing it would make him small. Just a man. A man who died and was given something back that he did not expect and does not entirely know what to do with yet. Eventually the shaking stops. He draws a breath that fills his lungs completely. He will not stop marveling at this, he decides. Not for a long time. And he opens his eyes and looks at the horizon. 2 suns hanging in the afternoon sky. The sand stretching to every edge of the world. Somewhere out there, not far by desert standards, is a town called Mos Espa. And in Mos Espa is a slave quarter. And in the slave quarter is a woman who should never have died the way she died. And a boy who should never have carried the weight that broke him. And he has arrived with 2 working hands, and a body the Force rebuilt for a purpose, and he knows exactly where he is going. He gets to his feet. The desert wind moves across the dunes in slow, continental waves. Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, the instrument of a force that does not accept unfinished business, rolls his shoulders, feels the unfamiliar weight of a body without armor, and begins to walk. Mos Espa at midday is an assault. The heat comes off the streets in visible waves. Bending the air above the packed clay thoroughfares until the far end of every alley looks like it's dissolving. Vendors bark prices in 4 languages simultaneously. Banthas low from a pen somewhere behind the market stalls. A Rhodian child sprints past with something stolen, and nobody chases her. Because in Mos Espa, the effort of caring costs more than the thing that was taken. He moves through it without difficulty. The crowd parts for him the way crowds part for large. Certain things, not because he announces himself, not because he wears armor or carries a visible weapon, but because the body the Force rebuilt carries 45 years of command in its posture. And people feel that without knowing what they're feeling. They step aside. They don't look directly at him. An old instinct, worn smooth by repetition. He knows this district. The slave quarter sits at the city's western edge, pressed against the canyon wall like an afterthought. Which is exactly what it is. He navigates without hesitation, past the pod racer parts dealers and the water merchants and the stalls selling salvaged Republic tech at prices no Republic citizen would recognize. And the streets narrow and the noise thickens, and then there it is. A row of low, dome-roofed structures, pale stone and packed earth. Moisture evaporators standing at intervals like sentinels that don't actually guard anything. He stops at the entrance to the lane and stands there for a moment. His chest does the thing it has been doing since he crested the last dune on the walk-in. A slow, sustained pressure, like a hand pressing from the inside. Not pain, something older than pain. He names it carefully, the way he would assess a weapon or a tactical position, because unnamed things are more dangerous than named ones. Grief, guilt, and underneath both of those, something that might be hope, which is the most dangerous thing of all. He walks down the lane. He finds the dwelling by memory. Third from the end, east side. The threshold stone is cracked at the left corner. It was cracked when he left, and apparently nobody has fixed it in the years since, because who in Mos Espa fixes things they don't have to? He stands in front of the door. He raises his hand to knock and stops. 45 years of Darth Vader did not prepare him for this moment. 45 years of planetary conquests and fleet commands, and the architecture of empire. And he is standing outside a slave dwelling on a desert planet with his hand raised, and he cannot make himself complete the motion. He knocks. Silence. Then movement inside, soft-footed and careful, the way people in the slave quarter move when unexpected sounds happen, not toward the door but sideways first. Creating distance, assessing, the door opens. Shmi Skywalker stands in the threshold. She is a woman whose face shows every year of it, not in the way of neglect, but in the way of sustained effort. The fine lines at the corners of her eyes from squinting against Tatooine's sun, the set of her jaw that speaks of a woman who made peace with hard things a long time ago, because making peace was the only available option. Her dark hair is pulled back. Her hands, he looks at her hands because he cannot yet look at her eyes, are clean but work-scarred, the knuckles thickened from years of mechanical labor. She is alive. He knew she would be alive. He did the arithmetic on the walk from the desert. The year, the timeline, the sequence of events as he lived them the first time. She is alive, and will remain alive for years yet, and knowing this does not prevent what happens in his chest when he sees her face. The stone settles in deeper. She looks at him with the cautious, evaluating expression of a woman who has learned that strangers on her doorstep are rarely good news. Her eyes move across him quickly. Height, hands, expression, the way he's standing. And he watches her file the information and withhold judgment, which is one of the things he loved about her that he forgot he loved. "Can I help you?" she asks. Her voice is exactly as he remembers it. Low and steady and warm underneath the caution. He has prepared words for this. He composed them on the walk through the desert, on the walk through the city, standing outside this door. Practical words, transactional words. He is here about her son's pod, he has heard about the boy's talent, he has a proposition regarding the Bunta Eve Classic. He says, "I knew your son. A long time ago. I wanted to make sure he was all right." This is not the prepared speech. He is already improvising, which is what happens when grief outpaces planning. Shmi's eyes sharpen. The caution recalibrates. Less threat assessment now, more something else. "You knew Anakin?" "Not yet," he says. "I will. I wanted to find him before certain things happen." She stares at him. He lets her stare. He has nothing to hide from her and no ability to explain the truth, and no intention of performing normalcy badly when stillness will serve better. "He's in the back," she says finally. "Working on his pod." She doesn't step aside immediately. She looks at him for one more moment with those dark eyes that see more than people expect, and he understands that she is making a decision the way mothers make decisions about strangers, not logically, but from somewhere below logic. The part of a person that has kept children alive for millennia before reason was invented. She steps aside. He ducks through the low threshold into the dwelling. It is small and immaculately kept. That was always true. Shmi Skywalker had almost nothing, and took care of everything she had with a precision that put senators' estates to shame. A single room visible from the entrance, 2 doorways beyond, the smell of machine oil and something cooking. A shelf with components arranged by size. The sound comes from the back, a soft, rhythmic tapping, the diagnostic knock of someone testing a connection by feel rather than by instrument, which is a technique you only develop if you've spent years building things without proper tools. Shmi watches him hear it. Something moves in her expression. "I'll get him," she says. No, the word comes out too fast. He moderates his voice. "Please, let me." Another look. Another decision below logic. She nods. He walks through the far doorway into a small workspace that is 3/4 pod components and 1/4 boy. The pod itself is partially disassembled, the turbine housing open, wiring running in deliberate loops that are not random. He can see the logic of the arrangement from the doorway. Can see the engineering mind at work in the spacing and the sequence. The boy has his back to the door, both hands inside the turbine housing, head tilted to one side in the particular posture of deep listening. 9 years old. Sandy-haired, thin across the shoulders but not fragile, the specific leanness of a child who has never had surplus and has built muscle on whatever the surplus didn't provide. He knows this child the way he knows the lines of his own face in the mirror. The set of the shoulders, the angle of concentration, the small sounds the boy makes without knowing he makes them. Breath and hum and the occasional soft word to the machine, talking to it the way mechanics talk to things they're trying to convince. The stone in his chest becomes something else. Becomes the weight of 20 years spent dying slowly in black armor, and 10 years before that spent becoming something he didn't have to become. And 30 years before that spent as this exact child who had no one standing behind him, saying you don't owe the galaxy your life. He crouches in the doorway. "Nice routing on the fuel feeds," he says. The boy startles, spins, nearly takes out the wiring with his elbow, catches it at the last second through some instinctive spatial awareness that is entirely the Force, expressing itself as coordination. He stares at the man in his doorway with wide eyes that are simultaneously Anakin Skywalker's eyes and not, clear and blue-gray and burning with an intelligence that childhood hasn't banked yet. "Who are you?" the boy asks. Honest, direct, no performance of manners over substance. He always was like that. He looks at the boy for a long moment. "Someone who heard you were the best pod racer in the Outer Rim," he says, "and someone who thinks you and your mother deserve better than this city." The boy's eyes don't leave his face. Already assessing. Already deciding. "Everyone on Tatooine says things like that," young Anakin says carefully. "And then they want something." He looks at the child who will become him and feels, for the first time since the desert, something close to peace. "I know," he says. "I'm going to want something too. But what I want is to give you your life back. And I have a way to do it." The boy stares. The pod sits open between them, wiring arranged in perfect patient loops, waiting. Qui-Gon Jinn finds the boy first. That is how it always happens. That is how it happened the first time, and Vader knew it would happen again, and he planned for it. Planned for the specific gravity of a Jedi Master, who follows the living Force like water follows a slope. Inevitable and unhurried, and entirely certain it will arrive where it needs to be. What he did not plan for was how it would feel to see him. Qui-Gon stands in the market square near Watto's shop, with his hood pushed back and his hands loose at his sides, the specific posture of a man who is simultaneously relaxed and paying attention to everything. He is tall, Vader forgot how tall, with the kind of stillness that comes not from discipline but from genuine comfort inside his own skin. A Jedi who never performed Jedi-ness, who simply was it, which was both his gift and the thing that made the Council regard him the way you regard a door that keeps opening into rooms you didn't expect. He is looking at young Anakin. The boy is across the square, filling a water container at the public cistern, chattering at a Twi'lek child who seems simultaneously charmed and overwhelmed. His hands move when he talks. They always moved when he talked. Vader stands at the lane's entrance and watches Qui-Gon watch the boy, and something in his tactical mind says, now, and something older and less tactical says, carefully. He crosses the square. Qui-Gon senses him before he arrives, the slight shift in the broad shoulders, the weight redistributing, the head not turning but the quality of attention changing direction. A Jedi Master's peripheral awareness is not a skill so much as a permanent condition, and Qui-Gon Jinn's is among the finest Vader has ever known. Which is a thought that arrives with its own specific grief, because knowing the quality of a dead man's awareness means you spent time learning it after it was gone. He stops beside him. They stand for a moment looking at the boy at the cistern. Remarkable child, Qui-Gon says. Yes, Vader says. Qui-Gon turns to look at him then, and Vader meets the look directly. The Jedi Master's eyes are gray-green and extraordinarily present, the eyes of someone for whom the current moment is always the most important moment, which made him an exceptional Jedi and an occasionally exhausting conversationalist. Those eyes move across Vader's face with calm, precise attention. What he feels through the Force in this moment, Vader can only estimate. A being of extraordinary living Force presence, but not dark, not light, both, braided together in a configuration that has no clean category in any Jedi text Qui-Gon has ever read. The contradiction of it should alarm him. It seems instead to fascinate him. You've been spending time with the boy, Qui-Gon says, not an accusation, an observation, offered with the particular Jedi neutrality that reserves judgment without pretending judgment isn't being quietly assembled. And his mother, Vader says. They're in a difficult situation. Most people on Tatooine are. Not everyone on Tatooine concerns me. Qui-Gon is quiet for a moment. The market moves around them. A land speeder passes too fast. Someone haggles in Hutt's 3 stalls over. A droid rolls through with a malfunctioning motivator making a sound like a wet cough. What is your name? Qui-Gon asks. Vader, he watches that land. Watches Qui-Gon receive it without recognition. Of course without recognition. The name means nothing yet. The name won't mean anything for another decade. The name belongs to a future that he is standing here specifically to dismantle and file it away with the careful neutrality of a man who collects information before drawing conclusions. Are you Force-sensitive, Vader? Significantly, the corner of Qui-Gon's mouth moves. Not quite a smile. I had that impression. Your signature is, he pauses, which for Qui-Gon Jinn is itself unusual. I don't have adequate language for your signature. I know. Both sides of something that should be mutually exclusive, Qui-Gon continues, working it out aloud in the way of a man who thinks by speaking. Light and dark not in conflict, but in resolution, as though both passed through you and came out the other side of each other. Vader says nothing. Qui-Gon looks at him for a long moment. You're not here by accident. No, and the boy is connected to why I'm here. Yes, across the square, young Anakin has finished at the cistern and is now demonstrating something to the Twi'lek child using hand gestures that appear to involve significant speeds and at least one near-death experience. His face is lit entirely from inside. Qui-Gon watches him with the expression Vader remembers, that specific quality of attention that was never quite calculating and never quite paternal but somewhere between the two. The look of a man recognizing something that has been described to him in prophecy, and is now standing in front of him in worn sandals, arguing about podracer physics. His midi-chlorian count, Vader says quietly, when you test him. Qui-Gon turns back. Higher than Master Yoda's, Vader says. Higher than any recorded count in the Order's history. The silence that follows is not empty. It has texture and weight. The silence of a significant piece of information arriving in a mind already working at full capacity. You know this, Qui-Gon says. I know many things I shouldn't. That implies a source. It implies a long story that this square isn't the right place for. Qui-Gon studies him. The gray-green eyes are doing the particular thing they do when he's deciding whether to trust, not calculating risk the way a soldier would, but feeling for the shape of a thing. The way you test ice by pressing gently before committing your weight. The boy's mother, he says finally. Shmi, she is a slave, Vader says. She will remain one unless someone intervenes. I intend to intervene. I would prefer to do it with the Jedi's involvement rather than around it. You're asking for cooperation. I'm informing you of my intentions and offering you the option of being useful. Qui-Gon's expression shifts, the almost smile again, more definite this time. You have an interesting approach to diplomacy. I have a direct approach to outcomes I care about. The Jedi Master looks back at the boy. Young Anakin has apparently convinced the Twi'lek child to race him somewhere, because they are both now sprinting toward the far side of the square with the reckless, all in commitment that children bring to things that don't matter at all, and therefore matter completely. Qui-Gon watches him run. The Council, he says, will want to evaluate him. The Council, Vader says, will have opinions I don't entirely share. That's a problem for a later conversation. The immediate problem is Watto. The Toydarian, who owns both of them and will not release them without leverage we don't currently have. The Bunta Eve Classic is in 3 days. The boy can win it. I need your ship's hyperdrive. Qui-Gon turns to look at him fully now, and there is something different in the look. The evaluation has shifted registers, moved from threat assessment into something more like recognition. Not of who Vader is, of what he is. The specific quality of a person who has been through something enormous and come out of the other side still standing and still certain. You want to wager the ship's hyperdrive on a child's pod race, Qui-Gon says. I want to wager Watto's confidence in a clean outcome against his own greed. The hyperdrive is the bait. The boy is not the gamble. I have seen him race. When? Vader meets his eyes. A long time ago, in a different life, in circumstances I cannot fully explain to you yet. The market continues its noise around them. A cloud of dust from a passing sandcrawler drifts through the square and dissipates. Qui-Gon Jinn, who followed the living force into situations that defied his order's guidance more times than the Council cared to count, who trusted his own perception of the present moment over the Jedi Code when the moment demanded it, who died on a plasma blade before he got to finish what he started. Qui-Gon Jinn looks at this stranger who carries the Force like a man who has held both its brightest light and its deepest dark simultaneously, and survived both. He nods once. Tell me the rest, he says. They turn away from the square together. Behind them, across the market, young Anakin Skywalker wins the foot race by 3 steps, and throws his arms up and laughs at the sky with his whole body. Neither man sees it. Both of them feel it. The Bunta Eve Classic begins at dawn. Not the sun's dawn. Tatooine's dawn is a negotiation between 2 stars that never fully agree. One rising before the other has set, the sky caught between amber and violet for an hour that belongs to neither day nor night. The race begins in that hour. The canyon walls above Mos Espa Grand Arena catch the doubled light and hold it like copper, and 70,000 beings pack the stands before the first engine turns over, and the noise of them is a physical thing, a pressure against the chest that has nothing to do with the Force. Vader stands at the edge of the pit lane. He is watching the boy. Young Anakin moves around the pod racer with the focused economy of a pilot who has already flown the race 100 times in his head, and is now simply confirming that the physical machine matches the mental one. He checks connections with his fingertips rather than his eyes. The tactile confidence of someone whose hands know things his conscious mind hasn't formally catalogued yet. He is 9 years old, and he is the most naturally gifted being Vader has ever watched prepare for anything, and that includes watching himself in the fragmentary memories that still surface sometimes like objects rising through deep water. Qui-Gon stands a short distance away, speaking quietly with Padmé. With the handmaiden, Vader corrects himself. The girl traveling as Padmé's decoy while the Queen moves through Mos Espa in disguise. He has been careful around her. She is 14 and sharp-eyed, and already carries herself with the particular posture of someone accustomed to responsibilities that exceed their age, and looking at her directly for too long creates a specific pressure behind his sternum that he has no clean category for, and so he doesn't. Watto circles the pod with a proprietorial anxiety that is almost comic. The Toydarian agreed to the wager with the gleeful certainty of a being who has never considered that the boy might actually win. His kind think in probabilities, in-house advantages, in the accumulated weight of past outcomes. What they cannot account for is a variable entirely outside the probability distribution. The Force. The race marshal's signal goes up. Engines ignite across the pit lane in sequence, the sound building from a cluster of individual roars into a single sustained wall of noise that Vader feels in his back teeth and his rebuilt sternum simultaneously. Young Anakin climbs into the cockpit. He looks back once, at Vader, and his expression holds something that is not quite confidence and not quite fear but the specific state that lives between them, awareness of stakes, acceptance of them, the forward lean of someone who has decided. He raises one hand. Vader raises his in return. The boy faces forward. The grid launches. He feels the shift 40 seconds in. Not in the race is proceeding correctly. The boy threading the canyon sections with a precision that makes the other racers look like they're moving through a different, slower medium. He feels it in the Force. A disturbance not from the arena, not from the stands, not from any of the 70,000 beings whose combined emotional output is a constant low roar in the background of his awareness. From the desert. Specific, intentional, moving at speed toward the race's outer canyon section. He is already moving before the conscious identification arrives. Darth Maul. The changed situation on the ground has accelerated the Zabrak's timeline. In the version of events Vader lived the first time, Maul was patient. He waited, watched, chose his moment for after the race, when the group would be exposed on open ground moving toward the ship. But the ground here doesn't match his briefing. There is a presence in Mos Espa that Maul cannot identify and cannot ignore, a Force signature that his Sith instinct reads as apex threat, and a weapon in an unfamiliar situation defaults to its primary function before the situation degrades further. Violence, now, rather than patience. Vader leaves the pit lane at a pace that is not quite running. Running draws attention. Crowds part wrong. People grab at you, but something faster than walking that uses the Force to make the space between himself and the arena's outer edge compress slightly, the way a skilled pilot uses a craft's momentum rather than fighting it. He clears the arena's maintenance tunnel and hits open desert in 40 seconds. Maul is waiting. He stands on a low dune ridge 200 meters from the canyon section's outer wall, his speeder bike dark behind him, his posture carrying the coiled readiness of someone who prepared this position deliberately. The Zabrak's face is red and black geometry, the Nightbrother tattoos that were meant to mark him as a weapon from childhood doing exactly the work they were designed for, making him look like what he is. What Sidious made him. He ignites his lightsaber. Both blades. The double crimson snap hiss fills the desert air, and the sound is so specifically, viscerally familiar that Vader's rebuilt body responds before his mind sanctions it. A full system alertness, every sense sharpening, the Force gathering around him with the unhurried ease of something that was always there and has simply been invited to be present. He reaches beneath his robe and draws the saber he built the night before Bunta Eve, in the back room of Shmi's dwelling while she slept. From components he sourced through 3 different dealers across Mos Espa in the afternoon hours. The kyber crystal he carried inside himself in a way that has no anatomical explanation and requires none. The Force has its own pockets. Blue blade. Steady. The color of the sky before the second sun rises. Maul looks at him. The animal recognition is immediate, and Vader watches it move through the Zabrak's body, the slight backward weight shift, the reassessment happening below the level of pride's interference. Every survival instinct Maul has is saying something his conditioning won't let him act on. 22 years of Sith training spent dismantling the instinct to retreat has left him with a weapon and a liability occupying the same space. "You are not Jedi," Maul says. His voice is low and precise, the voice of a man who uses words like tools and keeps them sharp by using few of them. "No," Vader says. "But you carry a Jedi blade. The blade doesn't define the carrier." Maul's eyes move across him with the quick, comprehensive scan of a trained killer cataloging threat variables. "I feel both sides of the Force in you. That's not possible." And yet, the double blade moves. Maul is fast, genuinely, extraordinarily fast, the product of 2 decades of singular focus, a weapon refined to such a specific purpose that everything extraneous has been burned away. He comes off the dune ridge in a single fluid motion, both blades angled for a high-low split that is designed to force a choice and punish either one. Vader makes neither choice. He steps into the attack, inside the arc of both blades simultaneously, and the force closes around him like a second body. Not a shield, not a deflection, but a complete spatial awareness that makes the gap between the blades not a gap to squeeze through, but a door to walk through. He redirects the high blade past his left shoulder with a motion that costs him almost nothing. His right elbow finds Maul's forearm as the Zabrak's momentum carries him through. The crack of bone is clean and specific in the desert air. Maul lands 6 meters away on his feet he would. His body control is extraordinary, left arm held at an angle it shouldn't hold. Both blades still active. The crimson light paints him against the pale sand. He looks at Vader with something that is not fear, and not quite its absence. "What are you?" Maul asks. Vader walks toward him. "Not fast. No performance. Someone who has fought you before, in a different life, and knows every combination you were trained to run." The double blade comes again, left-handed and adapted, which demonstrates either remarkable pain tolerance or Sith conditioning that overrides the body's protests entirely. Probably both. The attack is different now, shorter, more conservative. The adjustments of an intelligent fighter incorporating new information mid-engagement. It doesn't help. Vader takes the blade out of his hand on the third exchange, a disarm rather than a wound, deliberate. Then he pins Maul to the canyon wall with the force, not gently, but not lethally, and holds him there. Maul strains against it. He can't move. The telekinetic pressure is absolute, the kind that doesn't announce itself or fluctuate, simply exists the way gravity exists. "You will be taken to Coruscant," Vader says. "The Council will want to know about you. More importantly, they will want to know about your master." Maul's yellow eyes burn. "You think Sidious fears your council? No. I think your master fears me." Vader looks at him steadily. And he should. In the canyon behind them, the crowd noise swells into something enormous, a roar that climbs above the arena walls and spills into the open desert. The boy has won. The Jedi Temple at mid-morning. The 5 spires rise above Coruscant's endless silver sprawl, catching the light at angles that make them look less like architecture and more like something grown rather than built. From the landing platform on the temple's eastern face, the city stretches to every horizon without interruption. 2 trillion beings living their lives in stacked layers beneath a sky crossed by 1,000 ships, and above all of it this ancient structure sitting in its own specific quiet, the way a stone sits in a river. Vader steps off the transport and breathes recycled city air that smells of fuel and metal, and the particular density of a place where too many people share too little sky. Young Anakin stands beside him with his head tilted back, looking up at the spires. He has never seen them before. He is looking at them the way he looked at his podracer before the race. The focused intake of someone storing everything. The gaze of a mind that catalogs what it loves before it names the feeling. His mouth is slightly open. He doesn't know it. Shmi stands on his other side with her hands folded in front of her, and her expression doing the thing it has done since they boarded Qui-Gon's ship. A careful, deliberate calm that sits over something much larger and much less calm. She freed. That is the word and the fact, and the entire enormity she is still working to contain. Watto, faced with the boy's race win, and the particular persuasive pressure Vader applied to the negotiation afterward, not force persuasion, just the blunt arithmetic of a man who knew exactly which threats carried weight with a Toydarian and deployed them in the correct sequence, Watto agreed. Both of them. Freed. The papers signed before the ship left Tatooine's atmosphere. She is free, and she is standing in front of the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, and somewhere underneath the careful calm the enormity is still arriving. In waves. And she is managing it with a dignity that costs her something visible. He does not look at her for too long. Qui-Gon moves to the front of the group. The council convenes in an hour, he says. They'll want to see the boy. And you. I know, Vader says. They'll have questions I don't have answers to. Yes, Qui-Gon looks at him with the measured patience of a man who has accepted that certain information will arrive when it arrives. Is there anything you want to tell me before we go in? Vader considers this honestly. Don't let them make decisions about the boy in the first session. Whatever they conclude about his training, push for time. He needs to be evaluated fully before the council forms a position. You don't trust their judgment. I trust their perception. I have questions about their conclusions. Qui-Gon holds his gaze for a moment, then nods. The council chamber sits at the temple's highest occupied point. 12 seats arranged in a circle beneath a domed ceiling that opens to the Coruscant sky. The light in this hour falls in wide, clean shafts through the upper windows, cutting the room into sections of gold and shadow. The 12 masters are already seated when they enter. Vader knows every face. He has stood in this room before. Never like this. Mace Windu sits directly across the chamber's primary axis, which is either coincidence or a deliberate positioning choice, and either way communicates the same thing. His expression is contained and precise and doing a great deal of work to remain so. His force presence is considerable, second perhaps to Yoda's in this room, certainly above every other master present. And it presses against Vader's awareness, with the controlled intensity of a man running significant power through a very small aperture. He is already suspicious. He was suspicious the moment Qui-Gon's preliminary communication mentioned Vader's name, his force signature, the Sith apprentice now in Republic custody, who refused to discuss his master but mentioned, twice, that there was a third party on Tatooine who should concern the Council more than the Queen's rescue. Yoda sits in his chair at the chamber's edge, with his eyes half closed and his 3-fingered hands folded over the top of his Geimer stick. He has not opened his eyes fully since they entered. He is reading the room the way Vader reads a battlefield. Not the surface of it, but the structure beneath, the load-bearing elements, where the stress concentrates. Young Anakin stands between Vader and Qui-Gon with his chin up and his hands loose at his sides, doing a creditable impression of a child who is not intimidated by 12 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy looking at him simultaneously. The impression is not entirely successful. His left thumb moves against his forefinger in a small, repeated motion, a self-soothing gesture he doesn't know he makes. Vader knows he makes it. He made it for years before the suit took his hands and the mechanical replacements felt nothing, and the habit died of starvation. The sight of it does something specific and quiet to his chest. "Young Skywalker," Mace Windu says, "we would speak with you first." "Alone, he stays," Vader says. The chamber goes still in a particular way, the stillness of 12 minds all redirecting their attention simultaneously onto the same object. Mace Windu's eyes move to him with the controlled deliberateness of someone who is choosing not to respond at the speed his instincts are recommending. "You are a guest of this council," Mace says, "not a member of it." "The boy is 9 years old," Vader says. "He has been removed from the only home he's known, brought to a planet he's never seen, and placed in a room with 12 strangers who are deciding his future. He will not be evaluated in isolation." He meets Mace Windu's gaze without adjustment. That is not a challenge to the Council's authority. It is a condition of my cooperation with it. The silence that follows has its own climate. Yoda opens his eyes. They are pale green and very old, and they find Vader across the chamber with a directness that bypasses the room's intervening space entirely. He feels the touch of that gaze in the Force, not an intrusion, not a probe, but an attention so complete and so honest that deflecting it would be not just futile but somehow wrong, like lying to a mirror. Yoda says, "Nothing else. Just that sound, carrying more information than most beings convey in paragraphs. Your Force presence," Mace says, and the discipline in his voice is holding, but showing the effort now, is unlike anything this council has encountered. Both aspects of the Force, present simultaneously, in a configuration that should not be stable. A pause. "What are you?" "I am someone who has seen what happens to this boy when he is processed by institutions that prioritize the institution over the child," Vader says. "I am here to prevent that specific outcome." "That is not an answer to the question asked," Mace says. "No, it isn't." Mace Windu holds his gaze for a long moment, and Vader reads what moves underneath that controlled expression. Not just suspicion, not just authority challenged, but something closer to genuine disquiet. A man who has spent his life reading the Force, encountering something the Force isn't giving him clean information about, which for Mace Windu is the equivalent of a compass spinning. It is Yoda who speaks next, and when he does the room breathes differently. Experienced much you have. The pale green eyes have not moved from Vader's face. Suffered much. Chosen much. The Geimer stick taps once against the floor, soft and deliberate. Both sides of the Force's deepest nature, carried in one being. Seen this, I have not. Felt this. A pause that carries weight once. Long ago. In a prophecy I hoped I understood. The council chamber is very quiet. You believe I'm connected to the prophecy, Vader says. Connected, Yoda says. Yes, how? That is the question whose answer I do not yet see clearly. The old eyes finally move from Vader to the boy, and the quality of attention shifts. Softens is not the right word. Deepens is closer, the way water deepens at the edge of a shelf. But the boy. Bright. He burns. Brightest thing in this room. The eyes come back. Brightest thing I have felt in a very long time. Young Anakin has stopped moving his thumb. He is looking at Yoda with the expression of a child who has just been seen, fully, specifically, without reduction, for perhaps the first time by someone with the capacity to hold what they see without flinching. Vader watches it happen. He watches the boy stand up slightly straighter, not from pride but from the specific physical response of a person who has been recognized, the body answering something the mind is still catching up to. Mace Windu looks at Vader with the expression of a man revising his position without conceding it. You'll remain on Coruscant during the evaluation period. Yes, Vader says, and you'll submit to a separate evaluation. Your own. Yes, you agree easily for someone who just refused a council directive. I refused an unnecessary directive, Vader says. Yours is necessary. I have no objection to being understood. He holds Mace Windu's gaze. I have considerable objection to being misunderstood and acted upon. Ki-Adi-Mundi leans forward from his seat at the chamber's western arc, his domed cranium catching the light, the skepticism in his expression precise and unhurried. Your Force signature, he says, defies anything our records contain. Before this council accepts your cooperation as given, I would know one thing plainly. The Syrian's pale eyes are steady. Are you a threat to this boy? Vader looks at him directly. No, he says. He is the reason I am here. Everything I have done since arriving on Tatooine has been in service of his safety and his freedom. That will not change. Ki-Adi-Mundi holds the look for a moment longer, then settles back. The skepticism does not entirely leave his face, but it reconfigures, less active opposition, more continued watchfulness, which is appropriate. Which is exactly what Vader would want from a council doing its job correctly. Across the chamber, in his chair at the room's edge, Yoda closes his eyes again. But the corners of his mouth move. Coruscant at night looks like a circuit board dreaming. The city's upper levels catch the light from 10,000 sources simultaneously. Speeder lanes tracing luminous threads between towers, advertisement projections painting entire building faces in moving color. The slow navigation lights of freighters making their descent corridors through the regulated traffic lanes above. From the temple's eastern observation platform, the view is total and uninterrupted. The planet's entire visible surface reduced to pattern and light, and the particular beauty of a thing too large to see as anything other than abstraction. Vader stands at the platform's edge with both hands on the railing and looks at none of it. He is thinking about Palpatine. Not the Emperor. Not the robed corpse falling through the Death Star's reactor shaft in a future that no longer exists. The Senator. The man who is right now, at this hour, sitting in his office in the Republic Executive District 3 kilometers from where Vader stands, reviewing intelligence reports about the Trade Federation crisis's unusual resolution, reading summaries of the Sith apprentice now in Jedi custody, and feeling through the Force something that his decades of careful control cannot fully process. He knows Palpatine is thinking about him. He can't feel it specifically, the distance is too great. And Sidious's Force concealment is the finest ever developed, a technique refined across 1,000 years of the Rule of Two, layered so deeply that it doesn't read as concealment at all, but simply as the ambient political texture of a powerful man in a powerful city. But he knows because he knows how Sidious operates. He knows because he spent 20 years as that man's instrument, and learned his rhythms the way a prisoner learns the rhythms of the facility holding them, not by choice, but by survival. Sidious is rattled. Maul's capture destroyed a piece of the Grand Plan that cannot be easily replaced. The apprentice who was never meant to be seen, the weapon deployed in secret, is now in a Jedi detention cell answering questions with silence and fury, while the Council works methodically through what his existence implies. The Trade Federation crisis on Naboo resolved without Sidious's hand on it in the way he intended. The Chosen One, the boy Plagueis' research identified and Sidious has been monitoring from careful distance since the midi-chlorian anomalies first registered through moon banking intelligence, is now inside the Jedi Temple, being evaluated, surrounded by masters rather than proceeding along the trajectory the Grand Plan required. And there is a being in the Force that Sidious cannot identify or categorize, whose signature carries both sides of the Force in a configuration that Sith instinct reads as either a weapon or a catastrophe, and who appears to have arrived from nowhere and begun dismantling the architecture of Sidious's long game with the calm efficiency of someone who already knows where every load-bearing wall is. He is afraid. Vader takes a certain cold satisfaction in this and does not pretend otherwise. The platform door opens behind him. He knows who it is before she speaks. Her footstep is specific. The particular measured cadence of someone who has been trained to move in formal environments and retained the training even after the formality has been suspended for the evening. "You should sleep," Padmé says. She has stopped wearing the handmaiden disguise aboard the temple. Here she moves as herself, or closer to herself, the Queen's formal face relaxed into something more direct, though the directness itself is a kind of formality, the particular self-possession of a 14-year-old who has never had the option of being otherwise. "I don't require much," Vader says. She comes to stand at the railing 2 meters from him. Not adjacent, a considered distance, the instinctive positioning of someone accustomed to assessing the people around her before deciding how close to be. She looks at the city. "Anna couldn't sleep either," she says. Something shifts in his chest at the name. Not pain. He has moved past the category of pain this generates into something more like a dull, structural awareness, the way you remain aware of a healed bone in cold weather. Where is he? With Master Qui-Gon. They're in the atrium below. Qui-Gon is teaching him to meditate. She pauses. "It's not going well." "It never went well," Vader says, and catches himself. She looks at him. The dark eyes are sharp in the way they are always sharp. Not suspicious exactly, but present. The eyes of someone for whom observation is not a choice but a habit installed by early responsibility. "You say things like that." "Like what?" "Like you know how things went. Past tense, for things that haven't happened yet." He looks at her steadily. "You're perceptive. Everyone keeps saying that as though it explains something." Her tone carries a dry edge that in another decade will become the precise, measured wit of a senator who has learned to make legislative opponents feel slightly foolish without giving them grounds to object. "Who are you, really?" "Qui-Gon trusts you," which means something. But Qui-Gon also trusts the Force's judgment more than most people's, which means his trust tells me about the Force's intentions more than yours. That's an astute distinction. Answer the question. He looks back at the city. How much? How little? The balance between enough truth to earn what he needs from her and too much truth, which, in the wrong hands at the wrong moment, could destabilize things in ways his intervention can't correct. "I'm someone who was given a second opportunity to prevent a specific series of events," he says. "Events that cost a great many people a great deal, including people a pause, cared about." She considers this with the seriousness she gives everything. The boy is part of it. The boy is the center of it. And me? He is quiet for a moment. The speeder traffic moves through its corridors above them, an endless patient river of light. You are someone who matters. In ways that go beyond your political position and your own understanding of your significance. She receives this without visible reaction, which is itself a significant reaction. A girl of 14 who can hear that she matters in ways she doesn't understand and hold it without either deflating or expanding tells you everything about the person she already is. You're not going to explain further, she says. Not tonight. Fair. She looks back at the city. The council is afraid of you. The council is disciplined about their fear. There's a difference. Mace Windu looked at you today like you were a structural problem he hadn't anticipated needing to solve. Mace Windu looks at most things that way. The ghost of a smile crosses her face. Qui-Gon said your evaluation results are, his word was unprecedented. Qui-Gon uses understatement as a courtesy. Higher than any count the Order has ever recorded, she says. And the smile is gone, replaced by the other thing, the careful, evaluating attention of someone assembling implications. They wouldn't give me a number when I asked. Just that the reading was beyond anything they had language for. I asked because the count for Ani was already described as impossible, and then I heard masters in the hall saying yours exceeded even that, and I needed to understand what that meant. He says nothing. It means, she continues, working it out the way she works out everything, methodically, without theater, following the logic where it goes, that you are possibly the most force-connected being ever recorded. And you arrived on Tatooine at precisely the moment a Sith weapon was deployed, and freed a slave woman and her son, and captured the Sith weapon, and brought the boy to the council. A pause. That's not coincidence. No, that's a plan. Yes, whose? He turns to look at her fully. She meets it without flinching, which at 14, facing what she's facing him with, is genuinely remarkable. The Force's, he says. And mine. In that order. She holds his gaze for a long moment. The thing that worries me, she says, isn't what you're doing. It's what you're not telling us about what comes after. After is contingent on now. That's a non-answer dressed as philosophy. It is, he agrees. I'm sorry. She straightens from the railing, pulls her robe slightly closer against the platform's altitude wind. Annie asked about you tonight. He wanted to know why you watch him the way you do. A pause at the door. I didn't have an answer. What did you tell him? That some people carry things they can't put down, she says, and sometimes those things make them look at other people like they're trying to make sure they're still real. She goes inside. He turns back to the city, 3 kilometers away, in a building he could identify from any angle. Palpatine sits in his office and thinks. The storm is gathering on both sides. Vader stands in the eye of it and watches the light move across 10,000 towers and counts the hours until he will have to stop watching and start moving, and lets the night hold what it can for as long as it will. The Republic Executive Building at dawn. It rises from Coruscant's governmental district like a declaration, 40 stories of pale durasteel and transparasteel. The architectural language of institutional permanence, of power that has learned to wear the face of procedure. The Senate Rotunda sits 3 blocks east, visible from the building's upper floors as a vast dome catching the planet's first light. Between the two structures, the city moves with its usual indifferent efficiency. A million individual purposes flowing past each other, without acknowledgement. Vader walks through the building's main entrance at 0600. No disguise. No concealment. He wears the same dark clothing he has worn since Tatooine, moves with the same unhurried certainty, and the security personnel at the entrance checkpoint respond to him the way all security personnel respond to people who move as though their authorization is already settled. They check his credentials, find them in order thanks to a Republic identity Qui-Gon arranged through channels Vader, decline to examine too closely, and wave him through. Behind him, 12 Jedi Masters enter in 2 columns. Mace Windu walks at his left. They did not arrive at this moment easily. The council session 3 hours ago was the most concentrated resistance Vader has faced since landing on Tatooine, not because the Masters doubted his intelligence about Palpatine's identity, but because the intelligence itself was so catastrophic that doubting it was the more comfortable response. A Sith Lord embedded in the Republic Senate, not a peripheral figure, not a recent infiltration. the Supreme Chancellor's closest political ally, the man who has spent decades building toward the chancellorship through a manufactured crisis he controls from both sides. Mace Windu spent 40 minutes finding reasons it couldn't be true. Vader spent those 40 minutes providing specifics, not vague Force impressions. Specifics: the Sith Eternal on Exegol, the clone army commissioned through a dead Jedi's identity on Kamino, the inhibitor chips already encoded in 200,000 soldiers. The exact legislative maneuvers Sidious will use to centralize executive power once the war he's building reaches its designed apex. The war that will not happen now, because he is here, and he knows every move in advance, and Sidious does not know that he knows. The final argument that moved Mace Windu was the simplest. Take him in for questioning. If Vader is wrong, a senator is inconvenienced. If Vader is right and they do nothing, the Republic ends. Mace Windu does not accept losing the Republic as an outcome. They take the turbolift to the 38th floor. The doors open onto a corridor of quiet offices, early morning staff moving between rooms with datapads, the ambient productivity of governmental machinery in its morning hours. Vader leads without hesitation. He knows this floor, has been on it in another life in different circumstances, knows which door, knows the anteroom layout, knows where the desk sits and the precise sightline from the chair behind it to the corridor entrance. He stops outside the office door. The Force here is specific. The concealment technique Sidious uses is the finest in existence, and it operates below the threshold of casual awareness, which is what makes it effective against Jedi who are looking for darkness and finding instead the benign political texture of a powerful man's ambition. But Vader is not looking for darkness. He is looking for the specific frequency of a man he spent 20 years beside, whose Force presence he knows the way you know a voice that spoke to you every day for 2 decades. It is there. Behind that door, he looks at Mace Windu. Mace Windu's jaw is set and his eyes are doing the controlled interior work of a man who has just felt what Vader is pointing at, and is recalibrating everything he thought he understood about the last 40 years of his life. The brown skin at his temple is tight. His right hand is not on his lightsaber, but is aware of it. He nods once. Vader opens the door. Palpatine sits behind his desk in the dim, pre-dawn light of his office, a cup of tea at his right hand, a datapad in his left, reading with the mild, unhurried focus of a man who makes productive use of early hours. He is approximately 52 years old in this body, and wears it well. The distinguished lines just beginning at the corners of his eyes, the dark hair only lightly touched with silver at the temples, the careful warmth of expression that has made him the most trusted political figure in the Republic for 15 years. The face that hid everything. The face that smiled at Anakin Skywalker while engineering the circumstances of his fall. He looks up. His eyes find Vader first. Something happens in them that is not visible to most of the beings in the room. A flash of recognition without knowledge, the instinctive threat response of a predator encountering something that registers as apex. The split second of animal recalibration before the performance reasserts itself. It reasserts itself very fast. He is extraordinarily good. But Vader sees the flash. Master Windu, Palpatine says, warm and slightly puzzled. This is unexpected. I wasn't aware we had a meeting. We don't, Mace says. Palpatine's eyes move between the 12 masters arranged in the doorway and Vader standing at their front, and the calculation behind the warmth is working very fast, processing variables, assessing options, finding the response that preserves the most. What is this about? He asks, with the specific tone of a man who is mildly concerned and completely innocent, and entirely cooperative. You, Vader says. The word lands in the room, and Palpatine looks at him, fully, directly, for the first time. The amber eyes that beneath the surface hold something ancient and cold and patient make their assessment. What they find in Vader's face stops the performance completely for one moment. One unguarded, specific moment. He knows, not who Vader is, but what Vader knows. The depth of it, the specificity. A man does not look at you with that quality of knowledge unless he has been inside the architecture you built, has walked every room, knows where the doors are that you never showed anyone. The warmth disappears. I see. Palpatine says softly. He stands. The movement is fluid and unhurried, and the desk between them becomes irrelevant as the force shifts in the room. Not dramatically, not the operatic surge of a Sith Lord dropping his concealment entirely, but a calibrated increase in pressure, the dial turning just enough to communicate that communication is over. His right hand moves toward his sleeve. "Don't," Vader says. Palpatine's hand stops. The two of them look at each other across the desk, and across 45 years of a relationship that in this timeline has not yet begun and will not begin now. And the thing between them is not hatred, and not grief, and not the vast, crushing complexity of father and son and master and apprentice, all occupying the same broken configuration. It is something cleaner than all of that. It is finality. "You know what I am," Palpatine says. His voice has dropped into its other register, the graveled, precise voice that belonged to Darth Sidious and not to the Senator, the voice Vader heard for 2 decades issuing orders from behind the mask of governance. "Yes," Vader says. "And you know what I'm capable of. Better than anyone alive." The amber eyes narrow slightly. Then you understand that this, a slight gesture encompassing the room, the masters, the moment, is not an ending. It is a complication. Vader takes a step around the desk. "You conducted your entire plan on the assumption that no one would ever know enough to stop it before it started," Vader says. "That the pieces were too dispersed, the timeline too long, the deception too complete. You were right about all of it. Another step. You were wrong about one variable." "You," Palpatine says. "Me. Who are you?" Vader stops. 3 feet between them. Close enough that the distance requires the commitment of a man who has calculated it. "I am what your plan produced," he says. "And I'm here, before your plan begins. That's all you need to know." Palpatine looks at him for a long moment. Then something extraordinary happens. Something Vader did not expect and that will stay with him. Palpatine smiles. Small, genuine, absent of warmth but containing something that in another being might be called respect. "Remarkable," he says quietly. Mace Windu's lightsaber ignites at the room's edge. Palpatine's eyes move to it, then back to Vader. He does not reach for his sleeve again. "I will not make this easy for you," he says. "I know," Vader says. "I don't need it to be easy. I need it to be over." Mace steps forward. The arrest of Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, architect of the Clone Wars, emperor of a government that will now never exist, takes 40 seconds. He does not resist. He is too intelligent to resist in a room with 12 Jedi Masters, and something he cannot categorize standing 3 feet away. He goes with them quietly. At the door, he looks back once at Vader. "Whoever you are," Sidious says, "whatever you came from, the Force does not simply close a wound. It opens others." Vader holds his gaze. "Not this time," he says. The door closes. He stands alone in the dim office with the cup of tea cooling on the desk and the early light beginning to reach the transparisteel windows. And he breathes, and he lets the magnitude of it arrive without managing it. It is done. The Emperor is in custody before the Empire exists. The Republic stands. The briefing room adjacent to the Council chamber holds 8 people comfortably. 13 are in it. The senior masters stand where they can find wall space, data pads in hand, the star map projection at the room's center, throwing blue light across faces that are doing the work of absorbing information that restructures everything they thought they understood about the last 40 years. The map shows the unknown regions. That vast. Largely uncharted territory beyond the galaxy's western edge where navigation becomes unreliable and most Republic vessels simply don't go. A blinking marker sits at the edge of sensor range, past the Stygian caldera, in a region that doesn't appear in any standard chart. Vader placed it there himself. Exegol, he says. The name means nothing to anyone in the room. That is the point. A Sith world in the unknown regions, hidden behind a permanent electromagnetic storm system that makes conventional navigation impossible without specific coordinates. What exists on its surface is not a garrison or a temple in any conventional sense. He looks at the map. It is an infrastructure. Cloning facilities, Sith eternal cultists in numbers sufficient to crew a fleet. and the beginning stages of an essence transfer project that was designed to allow Darth Sidious to survive his own death indefinitely by passing his consciousness between engineered bodies. The room is very quiet. "We arrested Sidious this morning," Mace Windu says, with the careful precision of a man verifying that the sequence he thinks he's in is the sequence he's actually in. "The threat is not neutralized by his arrest," Vader says. "The Sith Eternal predates Sidious as Chancellor. It predates his apprentice. It is older than the current rule of two. It is a contingency architecture built across generations, designed to ensure that if the Sith's public face is ever removed, the machinery underneath continues. He lets that land. Sidious in a Republic detention cell cannot access it. But it is running. Right now, on Exegol, the processes he initiated years ago continue without him, and the beings maintaining them do not require his instruction to proceed." Qui-Gon stands at the room's far edge, arms folded, watching Vader with the expression he has worn increasingly over the past days. Not suspicion. Not the tactical evaluation Mace applies, but something closer to witnessing. The look of a man watching history happen in real time, and knowing it. "How do you know this?" Ki-Adi-Mundi asks from his position near the door, his voice carrying the specific skepticism of someone who has decided the best available response to the impossible is rigorous questioning. "Because I have been there," Vader says. "The unknown regions are. I know what they are. I know the coordinates. I know the facility's internal layout, its power grid configuration, its structural weaknesses, and the approximate number of Sith Eternal acolytes currently in residence." He looks at Ki-Adi-Mundi directly. "I am telling you what I know. How I know it is a longer conversation that this room does not have time for." Ki-Adi-Mundi holds his gaze for a moment, then looks at Mace Windu. Mace Windu says nothing, which is itself a communication. By this point, Mace has moved past demanding explanations Vader won't give, and has begun operating on the evidence Vader keeps providing instead, which is the pragmatic adaptation of an intelligent man. "What do you need?" Mace asks. "A fast cruiser, a small team, masters, not Padawans. And the coordinates filed with the navigational computer before we jump, because the Stygian caldera will disorient any pilot who isn't expecting it." "How long is the transit?" 18 hours, assuming the best available Republic vessel." He pauses. "We use what we have, and adjust. And when we arrive, the facility needs to be destroyed completely. Not damaged. Not captured for study. The cloning infrastructure, the essence transfer vats, the Sith Eternal's accumulated research, all of it." His voice doesn't change in volume or temperature, but something in it settles into a register that has no flexibility in it. If even one viable clone body survives, if even one piece of the transfer research survives, what we did this morning means less than it should. Mace Windu looks at him with the expression of a man who has learned to read the difference between certainty and performance. What he finds in Vader's face is not performed. He looks at the star map for a long moment. "I'll lead the team myself," he says. "I assumed you would," Vader says. "Good, the cruiser they take is a consular class, fast and lightly armed, built for diplomatic missions rather than military operations, which Vader notes and accepts." Mace brings 4 masters, Vader brings himself, and Qui-Gon insists on coming in the particular way Qui-Gon insists on things. Not argumentatively, but simply by being already present on the ship when departure preparations begin, with an expression that invites discussion while making clear the discussion won't change the outcome. They are in hyperspace within the hour. The transit runs long. Qui-Gon finds him 6 hours out, in the ship's small meditation alcove near the forward cargo hold. A room barely large enough for 2 people that someone has furnished with a single floor mat and a viewport looking into the blue-white tunnel of hyperspace. Vader is sitting with his back against the wall, not meditating, simply being still in the way he has learned to be still. Not the emptiness of the dark side, not the centered awareness of Jedi practice, but the specific stillness of a man who has stopped fighting the weight of what he carries and learned to carry it without the fight. Qui-Gon sits across from him in the small space. For a while, neither of them speaks. Hyperspace does something to time in enclosed spaces, stretches it, makes it available in a way the perpetual urgency of real space doesn't allow. Qui-Gon has always known how to use available time. "Tell me about him," Qui-Gon says. "The man Anakin becomes, not the details, the shape of it." Vader looks at the hyperspace tunnel through the viewport. He becomes someone who loses everything he was afraid of losing, and the loss doesn't free him the way he thought it would. He stops. It breaks something structural, and what moves into the space the break creates is not him. Qui-Gon receives this without rushing past it. "And you're here to prevent that. I'm here to remove the conditions that make it possible." The fear doesn't disappear. The capacity for loss doesn't disappear, but the architecture that converts fear into catastrophe, the war, the manipulation, the false choice between the Jedi and the people he loves, that can be dismantled. You speak about him as though you know him from the inside. Vader says nothing. Qui-Gon looks at him for a long moment. The gray-green eyes in the blue hyperspace light are very steady. "I won't ask you to confirm what I think I already understand," he says quietly. "But I want you to know that whoever he becomes, whoever you became, is not the sum of what I see in you now. What I see now is a man who fought through something I can barely imagine, and came out of the other side still caring what happens to a 9-year-old boy." He pauses. That's not nothing. That's not even a small thing. The weight in Vader's chest shifts. Doesn't lift. Shifts, redistributes into something slightly more bearable. The way a load becomes manageable not when it gets lighter, but when you adjust how you're carrying it. "He needed you," Vader says. "You specifically. Someone who trusted the present moment over the institution's anxiety about it. Someone who would have fought for him inside the Order instead of simply accepting the Order's conclusions about him." His voice stays level. "That's the other thing I'm here for. Not just Sidious. Not just Exegol." He looks at Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon is quiet for a long moment. "I'll stay," he says simply. "Whatever comes after today, I'll stay close to him." Vader nods. Exegol announces itself before they arrive. The red lightning begins at the system's edge, great arcing discharges moving between clouds of electromagnetic debris, a permanent storm that has raged for so long it has become the planet's atmosphere. The Chancellor class bucks and shudders on entry, hull creaking against forces that want it elsewhere. And the pilots earn their positions, just keeping the heading true. Through the viewport, the planet's surface resolves from storm into structure. Dark stone, ancient beyond any Republic reckoning, cathedral formations that were not built but grown over centuries of Sith intention. Between them, lit from below by sickly blue-white light, the facility. Vader looks at it and feels nothing that resembles hesitation. The team moves fast and hits the facility's secondary entrance, which the Sith Eternal's sentries are not watching, because no enemy has ever arrived from the storm's interior before. 3 cultist guards at the junction corridor go down before they can communicate anything. Mace's blade precise and economical. The cloning vats are vast. Rows of them, extending the length of a hangar bay. Each one containing something in a developmental stage that hasn't yet achieved what it was designed to achieve. Vessels not yet grown. Waiting for a soul that will never arrive to claim them. Vader walks the length of the first row without slowing, and does not look into the vats, and does not need to. A figure steps from the shadows at the chamber's far end. Old, robed, carrying himself with the brittle authority of someone who has held a position of religious certainty for so long that he has mistaken the certainty for correctness. The Sith Eternal's senior acolyte, face marked with the devotional tattoos of the cult, his force presence a dim and sour thing, a candle in a space that has held much larger fires. "The Sith always return," he says. His voice carries the absolute conviction of a man whose entire identity is organized around a belief. Vader looks at him. "Not this time," he says. "I made sure there's nothing left to come back to." The acolyte reaches for something at his belt. Mace Windu moves first. The charges go in at 7 points across the facility's structure, timed for simultaneous detonation, a pattern Vader mapped from memory. The team pulls back to the entry corridor with 4 minutes remaining, and Mace Windu accounting for every member with the focused efficiency of someone who has trained for exactly this, and is grateful to finally be running the operation, rather than being briefed on it. The last charge blows inward first, which is correct. It collapses the facility's structural spine, and the chain detonation follows in sequence, the blue-white light of the cloning vats going dark section by section, as the building folds into itself with a sound like a world clearing its throat. They reach the ship with 90 seconds to spare. In orbit, Vader stands at the observation window and watches Exegol burn below. The storm catches the fire and spreads it, the red lightning now carrying something orange in it, the ancient sky lit from beneath by what the facility has become. It burns for a long time. The darkness the Sith planted here across centuries, the contingency they built so carefully against their own mortality, the hunger that survived one death and planned to survive every death after, all of it burning. He watches until the fire becomes the planet's own, until there is nothing left to watch, and then he turns away from the window. It is enough. It is finally, completely, enough. Coruscant in the weeks after Sidious's arrest moves through its grief and its relief simultaneously, the way large systems absorb shocks, not cleanly, not in sequence, but in the overlapping, contradictory way of a civilization discovering that the ground it built on was not what it appeared to be. The Senate holds emergency sessions. 3 committees convene to investigate how a Sith Lord occupied a senior legislative position for decades without detection. The answers they find are partial and uncomfortable, and lead to further questions that further committees will spend years not fully answering, which is how institutions process catastrophic self-examination. The Jedi Order conducts its own parallel reckoning, quieter and more internal, 12 masters sitting with the knowledge that the darkness they were created to oppose had lived beside them for a generation, attended their galas, voted on their budget allocations, asked about their Padawans by name. Vader is not involved in any of it. He requested, through Qui-Gon, a quiet apartment in the Temple District. Not inside the temple itself. Inside it felt like a claim he hadn't earned and didn't want. But in the residential block 2 streets east, where Jedi support staff and long-term Republic guests were housed in modest, clean rooms with good light and minimal political traffic. He has been there for 11 days. He has slept, which surprised him. He has eaten, which surprised him less. He has spent mornings on the small balcony watching the city come awake and thinking about nothing deliberately, which is the closest thing to rest he has found. The summons from the temple comes on the 12th day, and it is not from the council. It is from Anakin. The courtyard sits between the temple's south face and a residential garden that the Jedi maintain with the specific care of people who understand that living things need tending even when, perhaps especially when, everything else is urgent. It is a small space, stone paths between low hedges, a fountain at the center that produces more sound than water, 2 benches set at angles that allow both privacy and line of sight to the garden's entrance. At this hour, mid-afternoon, it sits in full sun. Young Anakin is on the far bench with his knees pulled up and his chin resting on them, watching the fountain with the focused, lateral attention of someone who is thinking hard about something and using the fountain as a fixed point to think against. He looks up when Vader enters the courtyard. He has grown incrementally in the weeks at the temple, not in height, which doesn't work that fast, but in something else. The particular alertness that was always there has settled slightly, the way a high-strung instrument settles once it's been properly tuned. He has been sleeping in an actual bed, eating regular meals, spending mornings in the atrium with Qui-Gon, and afternoons with the temple's junior initiates, in sessions that are officially observation, and are functionally him absorbing 3 years of foundational instruction in 6 weeks through sheer velocity of attention. He watches Vader cross the courtyard and sit on the opposite bench. Neither of them speaks immediately. This is something they have developed between them, a comfort with the time before words, which is unusual for the boy, who is constitutionally inclined toward filling silence. That he has learned to hold it with Vader specifically says something about what he understands, without full articulation, about what Vader carries. Mom's been offered housing, Anakin says. Permanent, in the Temple District. I know. Qui-Gon arranged it. She cried. He says this as a fact, not a performance of sentiment. She thought she was done somewhere that she picked, that nobody picked for her. A pause. She hasn't had that before. No, Vader says. She hasn't. The fountain runs its small, continuous sound between them. A bird, something urban and brown and entirely unconcerned with Jedi affairs, lands on the fountain's edge, drinks, leaves. The council wants me to start formal training, Anakin says. I know that too. Master Windu thinks I should have started 3 years ago. His voice carries the dry edge that will become his characteristic register in 5 years, and currently arrives in flashes, unannounced. He said it in a way that was supposed to be encouraging. Mace Windu encourages people like he's solving an engineering problem. Anakin almost smiles. Then the almost smile recedes into the thing beneath it, the genuine, searching expression of a boy who has a real question, and has been assembling the courage to ask it for longer than this afternoon. Who are you? He asks. Really, not what you do. Not why you're here. Who are you? Vader looks at him. The question deserves an honest answer. Not a full one. The full one is a weight this child should not carry, a paradox that does not simplify into something a 9-year-old should be asked to hold. But honesty inside the constraint. That is possible. That is the least he owes. I am someone who made choices I couldn't undo, Vader says, and then was given the extraordinary, undeserved gift of a chance to make different ones. Anakin processes this with the focused seriousness he processes everything. What kind of choices? The kind that come from fear. From loving people so much that the fear of losing them becomes bigger than the love itself, and you start making decisions from the fear instead of the love. He pauses. From thinking that controlling outcomes was the same as protecting people. The boy's eyes are very steady. Did it work? The controlling. No. Did you lose them anyway? The stone in his chest. The familiar weight. Yes, Anakin looks at the fountain for a moment. My mom says the thing about holding on too tight is that you feel the moment it stops working. And by the time you feel it, you've already been holding too tight for too long. Vader looks at him, this 9-year-old child who carries wisdom like something inherited, already, from the mother who raised him alone on a desert planet, with nothing but herself and her clarity of thought. She's right, he says. She usually is. Anakin's chin comes off his knees. He straightens on the bench, a small physical shift that carries a decision in it. I want to train. With the Jedi. I want to. I think I can do things. Help people. I felt it in the race, I feel it when Master Qui-Gon is teaching me. He stops, edits himself, continues. But I don't want it to be I don't want to owe anyone my whole life for it. Is that wrong? Vader holds the question for a moment. He thinks about the boy who answered that question differently the first time, who said yes to everything asked of him because the alternative was going back to Tatooine, and the only way to guarantee he never went back was to be indispensable, to be extraordinary, to earn his place so thoroughly that no one could ever send him away, who said yes until yes was all he knew how to say, until the Council's expectations and Palpatine's manipulations and his own terror all became a single, continuous pressure that he mistook for destiny. No, Vader says. It isn't wrong. It's the correct understanding. He leans forward, elbows on his knees, which brings him closer to the boy's eye level without the deliberate theater of kneeling. The Force is not a debt you incur. Your gifts are not collateral for the galaxy's needs. You can choose to use them in service of others. That choice, made freely, is one of the finest things a person can do. But the choice has to be free to mean anything. He holds the boy's gaze. You are not a weapon. You do not owe the galaxy your life. You are allowed to be a boy, and then a man, who chooses his own path. Anakin looks at him for a long moment. You say things like they're the most obvious things in the world, he says. But nobody ever said them before. I know. Why not? Because most people are afraid of what you might choose if they give you a real choice, and afraid of what it means about their own choices, if choice was always possible. The boy absorbs this, files it. The way he files everything, not for later retrieval but for integration, the immediate incorporation of new information into the working model of how things are. "Will you stay?" he asks. "On Coruscant. After everything, will you stay?" Vader looks at him. He thinks about what staying would mean, what it would require. The man who emerged from the cosmic force on a Tatooine dune in a restored body was given a task, not a life, a specific bounded intervention, not permission to insert himself permanently into a timeline he already bent significantly by being here at all. The boy in front of him does not need a guardian who watches him the way you watch a thing you're afraid to lose. He has Shmi. He has Qui-Gon. He will have teachers and friends and choices, and a future that belongs to him in a way his first one never did. What he does not need is another person whose love arrives wrapped in fear. "My work here is done," Vader says. Not harshly, gently, and with the specific honesty of someone who respects the person they're being honest with, enough to not soften it into something it isn't. What comes after this is yours. All of it. Anakin looks at him with the clear, unflinching eyes of a child who has learned to receive difficult things without flinching. Because difficult things have always been the primary curriculum. Every time you choose freedom over fear, Vader says, you will. The boy nods once, slow and deliberate. Not because he is satisfied, the eyes say he isn't entirely, says there is more here than he has been given access to and he knows it. But because he is already, at 9 years old, a person who recognizes the boundary of what someone is able to give and chooses to honor it rather than push. He gets up from the bench. He extends his hand. Vader looks at it for a moment, this small, grease-scarred, extraordinary hand, and takes it, and shakes it once, and lets go. Anakin walks back toward the temple. At the garden entrance he stops and turns back, and for just a moment his face holds all of it, the gratitude and the grief, and the particular look of someone saying goodbye to something they don't fully have words for yet. Then he turns and goes inside. The fountain runs. The sun moves. Vader sits in the courtyard in the afternoon light with his hands loose in his lap and lets the quiet hold him for as long as it will. Naboo in the late season. The hills above Theed roll in long green waves toward a horizon that never quite resolves into a hard line. The atmosphere here carries enough moisture that distance softens into suggestion. The far ridges fading from green to blue to the particular gray lavender of late afternoon sky. The lake country to the north catches the declining light and holds it, the surface of the water going copper and rose simultaneously, colors that have no equivalent anywhere in the outer rim. It is, Vader thinks, the most beautiful place he has ever stood. He has stood here once before. Briefly, in a future that belongs to a different version of this story. He didn't look at it then. He was 23 years old, and in love, and afraid of both the love and what it meant, and the beauty of the place existed in his peripheral vision, while his attention stayed fixed on the things he was afraid of losing. He looks at it now. Weeks have passed since Coruscant. The Senate's emergency committees are still convening. The Jedi Council is still conducting its reckoning. Mace Windu is 3 days into what will apparently be a months-long series of closed sessions with Republic intelligence, working through the full scope of Sidious's infiltration of every institution he touched. The political machinery of a civilization discovering it was governed by a Sith Lord, is vast and slow, and will take years to complete, and Vader has no part in any of it. Qui-Gon arranged the invitation from Queen Amidala. Sanctuary, formally offered, in gratitude for the resolution of the Trade Federation blockade and the neutralization of the Sith threat that produced it. Shmi and young Anakin have been here for 2 weeks, long enough for Shmi to find her footing in a place where no one owns her, long enough for Anakin to discover that Naboo's lake country contains a species of aquatic creature that moves like a living current, and which he has been attempting to befriend through sheer patient persistence every morning since he arrived. Vader came this morning. He found Shmi first, in the garden adjacent to the guest quarters the Queen's household assigned them. A real garden, cultivated for pleasure rather than function, the kind of garden that exists to be sat in. She was there when he arrived, in a chair in the morning light with a cup of something warm and no particular obligation pressing her toward any other activity. And the sight of her sitting in a garden because she chose to, with nothing required of her and nowhere she had to be, landed in his chest with a force that the arrest of Sidious and the destruction of Exegol combined had not produced. She looked up and saw him and smiled, not the careful, evaluating smile of their first meeting at the threshold in Mos Espa. The other kind, the kind that arrives when someone you trust appears in a place you feel safe, the convergence of two good things at once. They sat together for an hour. She told him about Naboo, the light, the food, the lake creatures that Anakin was obsessed with, the way the people here spoke to her without the particular tonal quality that characterized every interaction she'd had in 20 years of slavery, the slight recalibration that happened in every voice when speaking to someone it considered property. Gone, all of it simply gone, replaced by the ordinary social texture of people talking to a person. She said, "I keep waiting to adjust to it and then realizing there's nothing to adjust to. It's just normal. This is just what normal is." He said, "Yes." She looked at him with the eyes that see more than people expect. "You knew this would happen." "I hoped it would happen," he said. "There's a difference." She considered this with the precision she brought to everything. "You hoped for us specifically, not in general. You came to Tatooine for us." Yes, she was quiet for a moment. "I don't know what you are," she said finally. "Or what brought you, or what it cost you." She held his gaze. "But I know what it gave us. And I want you to know that I know that." He didn't have words for what that cost him to receive. He found some anyway. "It was enough," he said. "More than enough." He finds Anakin at the lake's edge in the early afternoon. The boy is sitting cross-legged on a flat stone at the waterline, with his eyes half closed, and both hands resting on his knees, which is approximately the meditation posture Qui-Gon has been teaching him, adjusted for the fact that Anakin's version of stillness includes one foot moving in a small, rhythmic tap against the stone beneath him. Not restlessness. Rhythm. He was always made of rhythm, built internal tempo into everything he did, even rest. He doesn't open his eyes when Vader sits beside him. "The big one came again this morning," Anakin says. "The one with the blue fins. I think it's getting used to me." "How can you tell?" "It stopped turning away when I got close. It just held there, in the water, and looked at me." A pause. "That's trust, I think, for something that doesn't have a reason to trust yet." Vader looks at the lake. The copper rose light is moving across the surface as the afternoon deepens, the water doing its work of holding every color it receives and giving nothing definitive back. "Qui-Gon is coming next week," Anakin says. "I know. He said he's going to stay close. Not as my master formally, the council wants to discuss the terms still, but close." The foot stops tapping. He said someone suggested it was important, that I have someone who trusts the present moment more than the institution's conclusions about it. Vader says nothing. The boy opens his eyes and looks at him directly. 9 years old, clear-eyed, carrying that unnerving quality of perception that has always been there and always will be, the specific ability to look at something complicated and find the load-bearing element without being taught how. "You're leaving," Anakin says, not a question. "Yes, today soon." The boy looks back at the lake. The blue-finned creature surfaces briefly 20 meters out, the fin catching the light for a moment before it submerges again. Anakin watches the place where it was. "I dreamed about Tatooine last night," he says. "The dunes, the second sunrise." He pauses. "I don't miss it, but I think I'll always have it, somewhere in me." "Yes," Vader says. "That's how it works. Does it get smaller? The part that has it?" He thinks about the honest answer. "It gets further away. That's not exactly the same thing as smaller. But it stops being the only thing you can see, which makes it easier to see the rest." Anakin nods, absorbing this. The afternoon light deepens by one shade. The far ridge goes from blue to the first suggestion of violet. Vader feels it then. A warmth at the edge of his awareness, gentle and vast simultaneously, The way warmth from a very large source feels different from warmth from a small close one. Diffuse, complete, coming from no single direction, because it's coming from every direction at once. The cosmic force, calling its instrument home. Not urgently, not with the weight of a command, with the particular quality of a door standing open and light coming through it. He knew it would come. He has known since the courtyard on Coruscant, since the boy shook his hand and went inside, since the task completed itself and left him in possession of a body the Force lent him for a specific purpose, and is now, gently, requesting its return. He looks at his hands. The warmth is at his fingertips, a soft luminescence, barely visible in the afternoon light, the way stars are present in daylight even when you can't see them. Anakin looks at his hands too. His expression goes through several things in sequence, surprise, recognition of something he doesn't have full language for, and then a stillness that is not the stillness of shock, but of a child who has just understood something important and is choosing to hold it with the gravity it deserves. "Oh," he says quietly. Vader looks at him. "Okay," the boy says, soft, steady, the voice of someone who has practiced receiving difficult things until the practice became character. Vader reaches out and puts his hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. No words. Words would reduce it, would try to contain in language what is larger than language, would make the moment about the sentence rather than itself. He keeps his hand there for a moment, and then withdraws it. He stands. He turns toward the western water, where the sun is beginning its final descent toward the lake's far edge, the light now fully copper, the hills going dark at their bases while their peaks stay lit. The specific extraordinary quality of a setting sun on a world with a single star, everything shadow and gold at once. The warmth reaches his shoulders, his chest. He breathes in, one full breath, both lungs, the breath that was the first gift of restoration on a Tatooine dune, and has been available to him every moment since, unremarkable and extraordinary each time, and breathes out and lets it go. The light takes him gently, not with drama, not with thunder or the operatic finality of battles and deaths and the great decisive moments that history records. Quietly, in the afternoon light on a green world, between the lake and the hills, with the sound of water at the shore and a boy sitting on a flat stone watching it happen, with the stillness of someone who already knew, in the deepest part of himself, who this was. The light fades. Anakin sits for a long moment. Then he turns and walks up the slope toward the guest quarters, toward the garden where his mother is sitting in a chair in the late afternoon because she can, toward the life that belongs entirely to him now, in a way no life should be so fortunate as to belong to someone. Shmi looks up when he comes through the gate. She reads his face, she has always read his face, has been fluent in it since before he had language. And her expression softens into something that holds both the question and the answer at once. "He's gone," Anakin says. She is quiet for a moment. Did he say goodbye? Anakin thinks about the hand on his shoulder, the breath, the light. "Yes," he says. Shmi looks past him, toward the lake, the hills, the last of the copper light at the horizon. "Will he come back?" she asks softly. The light fades from the water. The first stars appear in the east, quiet and certain, present in the daylight all along. "He already did," Anakin says. Everything after this, he looks at his mother, at the garden, at the open gate and the open sky, and the whole unwritten length of a life nobody has claimed but him, is ours. The stars come out over Naboo, one by one, in perfect, quiet balance. The end. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.